Hello and welcome to my ranking for every single legendary lord in the Empire. If you're not aware, this is all building up to me ranking every single legendary lord in Warhammer 2, so if you want to see that, then be sure to subscribe. First of all, I'll quickly go over the rules and criteria. I'm going to be focusing on campaign rather than multiplayer because that's kind of my thing, and also anyone can make anything work in multiplayer if they are good enough. I'm going to be taking into account everything I can that is specific to the Lord and faction. This includes the unique effects they bring to their faction, the effects they have on their army, and of course the Lord themselves and their performance in battle. With all that being said, let's get into 4th place. Marcus Wolfhard. He starts on the northern tip of Lustria, which is just a big rip already. You're immediately at war with lizardmen, and it'll only get worse as the game goes on due to that penalty and the growing hostility. Pretty much everyone nearby hates you, so you're going to be in constant war no matter what direction you go in. Now, his faction has a limited roster with only basic units recruitable at the start, with more becoming available as you increase your Imperial favour. Reinforcements are available from the Empire every so often that bring powerful units to your armies, but they can't be easily replaced if lost. Hostile actions also cause retaliation from local factions, but also empower your own armies. He also has a series of missions to acquire up to 4 legendary heroes, which can make a serious difference in your battles and your campaign. He also suffers from -40 relations with lizardmen and +3 recruit rank for huntsman generals. For his personal army, he grants 50% ambush defense and success chance and -50% upkeep for archers and huntsman units, as well as granting the woodsman ability for all units, making them faster at moving in forests. His starter units are archers, which are your basic ranged infantry unit, huntsmen, which are a specialist anti-large ranged infantry unit, and war wagons, which are a kind of ranged chariots that no one seems to really like. As for Marcus himself, he's a hunter that deals massive armor-piercing missile damage across a huge range, as well as being a decent fighter in melee. He doesn't deal the most damage or have the most armor in melee, so you want to be careful who you're sending him against. He's also a sneaky lad with stalk and the ability to fire whilst moving, so he can get around the enemy and fire into their sides before they know what hit them. He has no mounts, and his items and abilities grant him damage and utility to take on his enemies more effectively. Now, the reason for his rank, and you're going to hear this a lot today, it is extremely close between all the Empire Lords because they are all really quite good. Unfortunately for Marcus, all the other Lords just have a way better starting location that negates everything else. He has a mix of mechanics that both help and hinder him, but no matter what, you'll be in constant war with lizards, pirates, Skaven, and anyone else nearby. Now, his army buffs are nice for countering Skaven ambushes, but honestly, how many times will ambushing help you win as the Empire? And upkeep on those units is nice, but still it's pretty minor and you won't be using one of those units, especially into the late game. In battle, he is a good fighter, but definitely not the most versatile with no magic or mounts, which leaves him very vulnerable to getting pinned down. Like I said, the only thing that's really bringing him down is that starting location because it is just so goddamn difficult, especially with the added hostility. Coming in 3rd place, we have Volkmar the Grim. This is going to be a controversial pick, I know, because his starting location is in fact one of the best in the game. He starts in Altdorf, which is in the heart of Reichland, which is the most central start in all of the old world. It is super duper secure unless you piss off all your Empire buddies beyond belief, since you can just ally them up and keep them at least peaceful and at most allied. Nearby enemies are the Vampire Counts to the east and eventually Norsca to the north, but honestly, you're protected on all sides by a delightful human shield of the rest of the Empire and Bretonnia. Now, for his faction mechanics, he grants 20% to item drop chance, 30% weapon strength and -30% upkeep for flagellants, and +2 recruit rank for warrior priests. For his army, he grants 30% replenishment rate, 14 melee defense, and 12% physical resist for flagellant units, and his starting units are the Tatsols, which are a flagellants regiment of renown, Knights of the Blazing Sun, which are a fire damage dealing cavalry unit, and flagellants, which are unbreakable chaff, which honestly don't really do any damage and just die super fast. As for Volkmar himself, he is a battle priest legendary lord that can use these lesser spells or prayers on cooldown to assist himself and his army in battle. He has some half decent melee stats, damage and armor, but he is for sure not the best choice for fighting, especially when on foot. Speaking of which, his mounts are fine, and the War Altar of Sigmar is great for making him into a beacon of buffs for his entire army. With all his items and abilities, he gets regeneration as well as buffs for himself and allies. Now, he does have a great starting location, but I'm putting him so low for one reason. His entire faction is focused on flagellants. His faction mechanics focus on them. His army effects focus on them, and even starts with a few of them in his army. And the simple fact is, flagellants kinda suck. They are just a chaff unit that's unbreakable. And you might be saying, well, they're unbreakable, they stay there forever. And if you do a doomstack of 1,000,000 flagellants, you can definitely make it work, just like you can with a zombie doomstack. But is it the most efficient way to play? Absolutely not. Now in battle, he's a great army leader, and with the prayers and war altar of Sigmar, he is one dude in battle who does not go down easy. But one dude in battle does not make the faction good. Coming in second place, we have Balthazar Gelt. His faction starts in Solland, in control of Fildorf as well as Fort Sol. This gives him a strong defense to the south, since forts are so dang strong to defend. He's less central and less defended than Karl, since vampires are much closer to the east and greenskins are just over the mountains to the south. For his faction mechanics, he has the suitable climate of mountains, he grants 10 armor for all units, and a +2 capacity and -50% upkeep for battle wizards. For his personal army, he grants 20% cost reduction for all spells in the Law of Metal, 10% missile strength for artillery units, and +2 recruit rank for battle wizards. His starting units are Outriders, which are rifle-wielding ranged cavalry units that do decent armor-piercing damage, Great Swords, which are the armor-piercing anti-infantry units of the late game, and Mortars, which are the early game anti-infantry artillery unit. As for Balthazar in battle, he's a fairly straightforward spellcaster with pretty terrible melee stats, so wants to be used entirely as a support unit rather than actual fighting. He does have decent mounts, but nothing that changes his fighting ability, so you're basically just giving him a little bit more HP and a lot more mobility. The Law of Metal is pretty great and can do a lot of damage, so using as many spells as you can is very recommended. And all of his items and abilities further buff his magical powers. Now the reason for his rank is he doesn't have as strong a start as Altdorf, because who the hell does, but it's still pretty good, especially owning a fort on turn 1. His faction mechanics are pretty great, especially if you're looking to spam a few mages from the start, and the army effects are, not too bad and not stupid overpowered if you run 19 Hellstorm rocket batteries, for example. In battle, he's also a great mage, but aside from that, he doesn't do too much else. Coming in first place, could it be anyone else than the Emperor Karl Franz? His starting location is the same of Volkmar's, central Altdorf in the heart of Reichland, super secure, and many, many allies nearby. His faction mechanics grant him 10 relations with other Empire factions, so you can get them on side and confederated as soon as possible. +2 to Lord Recruit rank, +10% campaign move range for all characters, and -15% to upkeep for Reiksguard and Greatswords. His personal army is granted 8 leadership at all times, and his starting units are Reiksguard, which are the pinnacle of horse shock cavalry in the Empire, Halberdiers, which are great anti-large armor-piercing infantry units, and handgunners, which are the top-of-the-line armor-piercing ranged units. As for Karl in battle, he has heavy armor and is also a heavy-hitting melee expert, with great armor-piercing damage and melee stats. This also makes him into an excellent duelist, so don't be afraid to send him in some one-on-ones. He has decent mounts, but the best by far is Deathclaw, that allows him to fly, as well as giving him a bunch more damage at the cost of some minor melee stats and a larger hitbox. And finally, his items and abilities grant a multitude of buffs to himself and friendly units. Now the reason for his rank is, well, could it be anyone else but Karl? The starting location, the same in Volkmar, which when combined with the increased relations with other Empire factions, allows him to get quite the network of non-aggression pacts and alliances on the go from turn 1. His other effects are pretty useful, seeing as they buff units you'll be taking with you into the end, and he also has some decent, if simple, army effects. Leadership is never a bad thing. Now in battle, he's the best duelist and all-around fighter in the faction, and while he may lack any magic of any kind, he's still fantastic and a brilliant army leader and exceptional fighter. And that concludes my ranking for all of the Empire Legendary Lords from worst to best. If you enjoyed this video at any point, then be sure to leave it a like, and if you want to see more videos from this series and more videos on Warhammer 2 and of course Warhammer 3 when it does come out, then be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a thing. I'd like to take this time to thank all supporters of the channel at every single tier, in particular Kobe said so, Nifty Norm, supporting me at that Unclean Ones tier. I really cannot thank you guys enough. One more time, thank you so very much for watching, and for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn.